the superhero line of work, the afterlife is only a few steps away. But not for these guys. I'm Adam Andrews with Top 10 Nerd, and today is the Top 10 Immortal Marvel Superheroes. Coming in at number 10 today is Mr. Immortal. What better way to start off a list of immortal heroes? Mr. Immortal possesses the ability to automatically resurrect and heal from any fatality that he ever suffers. The resurrection usually occurs immediately, and it appears that it stopped him from aging completely. He has recovered from being blasted, squished, losing air to his lungs, being crushed, blown up, infected, losing his head, blasted by radiation, and incinerated. The Death Urge, who Mr. Immortal grew up with, has stated that Mr. Immortal is fated to be alive to see the end of the universe, eventually being the sole survivor of the universe. Then, at the end, he would learn the quote, grand secret that will reveal itself at the end of all things. It's later revealed that this grand secret is merging with the sentience of the cosmos, surviving beyond the end of time, and moving on into the next iteration of everything, just like Galactus does. Franklin Richards is also said to have this same destiny, but according to the one below all, Franklin is the quote appointed prince, and Mr. Mortal is merely Franklin's backup, just in case Franklin happens to pass away. Number 9. The Eternals. Way back in the day, the Celestials came to Earth when proto-humans began to emerge, meaning around 2 to 5 million years ago. That's a long frickin' time. The Celestial first host performed genetic experiments on those early humans, resulting in 3 groups: the Immortal and Superior Eternals, the pretty grotesque and monstrous Deviants, and just plain Jane regular humans like you and me. The Eternals, aka Homo Immortalis, were basically created to defend the planet Earth, specifically from the Deviants, and to serve the Celestials. They became somewhat silent defenders of Homo sapiens, secluding themselves and rarely directly engaging with us. They built super impressive cities like Olympia, Titanos, Oceania, and Polaria, and their names have become intertwined with heroes throughout ancient history, and they are all immortal, being reborn if they ever actually bite the dust, hence the Homo Immortalis name. An average Eternal is intertwined with cosmic energy and can lift about 15 tons without using any form of telekinesis, but a few are able to lift up to 100 tons. Other Eternals specialize in different powers like telepathy and telekinesis, and all Eternals have the ability to join with one another to form the Unimind, made of light, mind, and just pure energy. Number 8. Nightcrawler. Kurt Wagner was first introduced in Giant-Sized X-Men #1 in April 1975 with the mutant ability to biophysically displace himself into the Brimstone dimension, travel through it with a subconscious sense, and then return back to our dimension in a different location. Essentially, teleporting. Now this all happens so fast it's almost instant, and it's always accompanied by the signature BAMF sound. Through his unique physiology, he gains a few extra abilities as well, like a prehensile tail, microsuction hands and feet, flexible bone structure, and he can also camouflage himself, bending light using the Brimstone dimension. But what a few might not know is that he is actually immortal, thanks to the fact that he sacrificed his soul in heaven to come back to life. This means he cannot be taken out by any natural means, and if he was taken out by anything else, the mutant resurrection protocols got him covered too, which is good because I never want to lose this legendary blue mutant. Number 7. The Thing. Ben Grimm's first year roommate in university just happened to be this brilliant young scientist by the name of Reed Richards. These two became best friends. After the two graduated, Ben joined the Air Force, becoming a pilot and an astronaut. Now, helping out his buddy Reed with a prototype spaceship, Ben volunteered as its pilot. And alongside Reed, Susan Storm and her brother Johnny Storm, the four were bombarded with radiation and they all gained superpowers. Of all of them though, Ben drew the short end of the stick, with his skin becoming orange and rocky, turning him into an extremely durable and extremely strong, monstrous thing. On the other hand though, Ben was now the only member of the Fantastic Four who gained immortality, being unable to age at all. Eventually, thanks to Johnny Storm, the Thing did get the ability to return back to his human form, but only once a year. This is the only time that he actually ages, and it's only by 1 day every year. If he chooses not to become human that year, then he does not age 1 day. Basically, the Thing will live for a very long time, if not just forever. Number 6. The Hulk. The gamma-powered green Goliath known as the Hulk has been around for a long time, and ever since he showed up there are only a small handful of people who have ever been able to stop him without using some kind of magic or reality warping. His infinite strength has a lot to do with that, a strength that grows based on his anger and has never ever really reached a cap, allowing him to destroy entire planets, be a threat to the entire galaxies, and being able to shake the entire multiverse with his punches. It also has a lot to do with his basically limitless dynamic durability, which has allowed him to survive attacks from enchanted weapons, powerful blasts of energy, stronger than ground zero nuclear explosions, the Human Torch's Nova Blast, and he could stand up to forces that could crush adamantium and destroy entire planets. We already knew that the Hulk persona would come out to stop Bruce Banner from ever passing on, and that the Hulk himself is practically unable to be damaged and heals very quickly if he is, but now, thanks to Immortal Hulk, we know that the Hulk actually, literally, cannot cease to live, coming back from the below place through green doors anytime he does happen to just bite the dust, which is never. Number 5. Ares. As the son of both Zeus and Hera, Ares is the Olympian god of war. Now, unlike a lot of others on this list, Ares has acted as a villain from time to time, which you would expect from a god of war. He's tried to conquer Olympus several times, usually being stopped by his half-brother, who we will talk about in just a moment. Now, growing tired of Zeus's rule, Ares retired from his position in Olympus and made his way to Earth to raise his son Alexander, aka Phobos, who is also immortal. His first real heroic Marvel moment came when he returned to Olympus to face Amatsu Mikobashi, the Chaos King. Since then, he has actually joined up as one of Iron Man's Avengers, even staying on the team when Norman Osborn took over. Eventually though, he kind of passed away at the hands of the Sentry, who ripped him in half, but he just went straight to Elysium, only to return as a fighter in the Contest of Champions, and after that, he went back to Earth and became one of the champions of Europe. Somehow though, he was taken out by the Punisher fairly recently, but he will probably absolutely return, as he is a god. Number 4. Hercules. Hercules is the son of Zeus, Skyfather and supreme ruler of the gods of Olympus, and Alcmena, a mortal woman who lived over 3,000 years ago. Athena, the goddess of wisdom, arranged for her father Zeus to have a half-mortal son to be the world's champion. Zeus seduced Queen Alcmena, pretending to be her husband, King Amphitryon, and Alcmena gave birth to baby Hercules. Now, as an adult demigod in ancient Greece, Hercules achieved worldwide fame, best known for his 12 labors. As the Olympian god of strength, Hercules' strength is unlimited, making him one of the strongest and most powerful heroes in the Marvel Universe. As an infant, he was breastfed by his stepmother, Hera, queen of the Olympian gods, which increased his already demigod physiology to godlike levels. Hercules possesses the superhuman physical attributes of an Olympian god, but interestingly, some of his powers are superior to the vast majority of his race. But like all of them, he's immortal. Number 3. Snowbird. Narya's origins trace back to ancient times when the Inuit gods of the north battled the mystical great beasts for the fate of the world. Ultimately, both parties were exiled from Earth, and as such, the Inuit gods sought to create an agent to prevent the beast's return. To that end, Nelvana, goddess of the northern lights, mated with a human. With the midwifery assistance of Sarsi mystic Michael Two Young Men, Nelvana gave birth to a daughter, Narya. Two young men bound the infant to the lands of Canada, allowing her to assume human form. However, she would weaken if she left Canada's borders. Two young men raised the rapidly maturing Narya as his own daughter, and both were soon recruited into Alpha Flight as Shaman and Snowbird. And Snowbird, being a god, like Hercules, is immortal. Number 2. Monkey King. A crime lord self-styled himself as a modern-day, quote, Monkey King. He was tricked by a rival into attempting to steal the original Monkey King's staff. Now, in the cave where the staff was held, he encountered the spirit of the original Monkey King, Sung Wukong, who, impressed by his audacity, let him take the staff and at least some of the original's power on the condition that he would be judged. If he was good, he would be allowed to go free, but if his heart was weighed down by evil, he would be cast down into the 8th city of hell. Now, being a crime lord, he was judged evil. He was cast down where he was trapped for years and years and years until one of the hammers of the worthy that was created during the original sin created a hole that allowed many demons, including himself, to escape. Having seen the error of his ways, he now dedicated himself to trying to atone for his past deeds and hunting down any other demons that also escaped alongside him, with the powers of immortality. Number 1. Deadpool. With powers originating from Wolverine's genetic mutation, only stronger, Wade Wilson, aka Deadpool, is a product of the Weapon X program, making him not only pretty difficult to take down, but also pretty difficult to defend against. But through his time, he's managed to become even more capable. At one point in the comics, Deadpool becomes infatuated with Death, as in Mistress Death. This is the same Death that the Mad Titan Thanos is also in love with. Now, because of this little weird love triangle, and Thanos being a big grumpy jealous boy, he decides to quote gift old Wade Wilson with immortality, meaning preventing him from ever being able to fully be with Death. In reality, he just vowed to return Deadpool to life no matter what it took if he ever managed to actually pass away. Coming from Thanos, that's pretty much the same as immortality, because Thanos is Thanos and he will do whatever he wants to do. But even without that, Deadpool's healing factor renders him basically immortal as he no longer ages, can live and control his body without his head attached, is highly resistant to foreign chemicals, immune to all diseases, telepathic attacks, and possessions. He's a master assassin and has the power of breaking the fourth wall, which in a way gives him almost godhood-like abilities in comic books.
Number 10. Bast. Also known as the Panther God, Bast is the child of Ra, and first appeared in Fantastic Four issue 52 in 1966, but solely as a totem. It is the deity that the Black Panthers of Wakanda get their powers from, after proving themselves worthy of the mantle through trials, gaining the privilege of using the heart-shaped herb. A Wakandan legend states that when the 5 tribes fought for control of the nation, a warrior shaman received the vision from Bast that led him to the heart-shaped herb, and to the responsibility of becoming king of Wakanda and the very first Black Panther. In addition to this, whenever someone passes away, in the afterlife they are brought by Bast and Sekhmet to a mystical green valley in which they can run freely in peace for all of eternity. And at number 9, Kronos. Kronos was initially one of the Eternals of Earth, but due to an explosion from an experiment gone haywire, he lost his physical form, and was left being an abstract energy form. Silver lining though was that this gave him immortality and cosmic powers. In Kronos' first appearance, he took the soul of Arthur Douglas, a victim of Thanos', and transformed him into Drax the Destroyer in order to take on the Mad Titan, who was also his own grandson. Kronos was one of the many cosmic entities who fought alongside Adam Warlock in the Infinity Gauntlet series, in an attempt to stop Thanos from wielding the Infinity Gems. Up next at 8 is Hela. Hela is based on the Norse goddess Hel, and is a constant antagonist of Thor's. The character first appeared in Journey into Mystery issue 102, and was created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. She's the daughter of a different incarnation of Loki who had died during a previous Asgardian Ragnarok. Odin appointed her as the goddess of the dead, and she would often butt heads with him and Thor over her attempts to expand her power to the dead who dwell in Valhalla. Speaking of, next up at number 7 is Thor. Perhaps the most beloved god on this list, Thor is based off of the Thor of Norse mythology. In the comics, he's the Asgardian god of thunder, who first debuted in Journey into Mystery issue 83 back in 1962. Prior to this, another version of the character had appeared in Venus issues 12 and 13 back in 1951. Created by Stan Lee, Larry Lieber, and Jack Kirby, the aim was to craft a character who was stronger than the strongest person. As Lee stated back in 1992, I quote, "It finally came to me. Don't make him human, make him a god." Kirby had initially drafted up a version of a Thor character for DC back in the 50s, but the one that he did for Marvel in the 60s really stuck. Enamored by legends, he wanted to take the Norse Thor legends of the real world and give them a modernist twist. Up next, number 6, Odin. Speaking of Thor, let's take a look at his father, Odin. Also based off of the Odin of Norse mythology, Odin is an incredibly powerful Asgardian, and can tap into the Odin Force, an ancient and vast Asgardian power which includes energy projection, creating illusions and force fields, levitation, telepathic communication with other Asgardians, molecular manipulation, hypnotism towards humans, control of Asgardian life forces, teleportation, and the channeling of lightning. Yeah, so dude can do a lot. Up next at 5, Eternity. Eternity is a wickedly cool abstract entity. Essentially every universe in the multiverse manifests itself as an anthropomorphic being known as Eternity. Eternity embodies Earth 616 reality, along with his sister Infinity. First appearing in 1965's Strange Tales 138, Eternity was the collective consciousness of all life, and was dependent upon it. Nowadays, Eternity rarely manifests himself, but when he does, it's because of an imminent threat to the universe, like when Thanos collected all of the Infinity Gems and imprisoned Eternity, proving that the entity isn't entirely omnipotent. That being said, Thanos ranked Eternity as standing above all other abstract entities. Hey, at least that's something to be proud of. And at number 4, Gaia. Gaia, an elder god, first appeared in Doctor Strange Volume 2, Issue 6 back in 1975, but under a different name, Mother Nature. A few months later, that name was changed to Gaia in Issue 4 of Giant-Sized Avengers. She possesses mystical powers of an unidentified nature, and appeared on Earth long before any life did. Her creation is due to the sentient biosphere known as the Demiurge, who made her at the dawn of life on Earth. Concerned with nature and evolution, Gaia has merged with Earth itself itself, although she often takes a humanoid form. She's also the mother of many other gods, and is often referred to as the Mother Goddess, birthing the likes of Thor after she and Odin mated. Gaia also has an interesting connection to our next number, in at 3, Set. Debuting in Marvel Future Volume 2 Issue 6, Set is also an elder god, but of a much more contemptuous nature than Gaia. While Gaia was concerned with life and geology flourishing, Set realized that if he devoured his fellow elder gods, he could add their power to his own, which has made Set technically the very first murderer according to Marvel. Other gods began to follow his ways, causing them to become corrupt and turn into demons. Set has a bond with reptiles, and often takes a reptile form. He even brought upon the emergence of the Serpent Men, although that race didn't last overly long compared to humanity. Up next at 2, Death. Death is one of the entities in the Marvel Universe who has had a major impact on the events of Earth and its heroes. This is primarily due to Thanos, and his infatuation with the character. His quest for the Infinity Gems and Omnipotence was to prove himself worthy for Death, and to carry out her wishes of correcting the imbalance of living to dead beings in the universe. She's also the hots for Deadpool, which is pretty great. Aside from her history with Earth, Death is the embodiment of decay and destruction, and was born along with the universe itself. She has no true form, but often manifests as a hooded human skeleton, and she lives in the realm of death, a place inaccessible to the living. She first appeared in Captain Marvel issue 26 back in 1973. And last but not least, in at number 1, Galactus. Despite not being the most powerful entity on this list, Galactus is arguably the most prominent. The first minus the Asgardians to come to mind when you think of Marvel and gods. In 1966, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby collaborated on a new antagonist to add to their incredibly successful flagship title, Fantastic Four. The idea was to craft a character that broke out of the current supervillain mold. According to Lee in an interview back in 1993, I quote, "Having dreamed up many powerful baddies, we felt the only way to top ourselves was to come up with an evildoer who had almost godlike powers. Therefore, the natural choice was some sort of demigod." And what about Kirby? Well, he dived into biblical inspirations for the character's design, describing Galactus and his angelic herald Silver Surfer as mythical figures, and noted that they were the first gods. Perhaps the most famous of the Marvel gods, Galactus was initially an explorer known as Galen of Ptah, who existed prior to the Big Bang. When the Big Crunch occurred, he was bonded with Eternity, where he changed and gestated for 1 billion years before emerging. In order to sustain himself, he must devour planets for energy. This is when he created the Silver Surfer as a herald to find planets for him to devour, and how the character came upon Earth.
Are you missing the more tragic and disturbing aspects of the Hulk after seeing him dab and say bruh over the last few years in the MCU? If so, you are in for a treat, because today we will be exploring one of the darkest and scariest Hulk stories ever released by Marvel. I'm Andrew Boyd, and today on Top 10 Nerd I will be attempting to explain the first 10 issues of Al Ewing's Immortal Hulk. Immortal Hulk is quite different from many other modern Hulk stories that tend to be cosmic action stories like Planet Hulk, and instead tries to return the character to his roots by telling an incredibly dark and disturbing horror story that explores the nature of good and evil and the gray area in between. It is a 50-issue arc that would be much too long to get into in one video, so we will be taking a look at the first 10 issues, and if you want, we might continue this deep dive in an eventual part 2 and beyond. Issue 1 begins with a quote by Carl Jung that sets the tone for the story. Man is on the whole less good than he imagines himself or wants to be. At a gas station, a teenage girl is shopping for a drink while a drifter looks at a newspaper that talks about how the Hulk is assumed dead. An armed robber comes in and tries to rob the cashier, but is spooked when the girl drops a glass bottle in shock at the sight of him. He instinctively turns and shoots the girl. The drifter is shocked at this and starts to get angry. Before we can find out if the robber will like him when he's angry, he shoots the drifter in the head, seemingly killing him. The cashier begs for his life, but not wanting to leave any witnesses, the robber kills him too. We are then introduced to a reporter named Jackie McGee. She is clearly a riff on the investigative reporter Jack McGee, who was hunting the Hulk in the classic 1970s Incredible Hulk television series. Jackie is covering the robbery for the local paper and is informed by the local police captain that they are not optimistic about finding the murderer. Meanwhile, in the morgue across town, night falls and the drifter comes back to life, transforming into the Hulk. Hulk goes after the distraught robber, who we learn was only stealing to try and pay off a debt to a local biker gang so he can support his family. Hulk attacks the gang and chases the robber, who he soon corners. Hulk, who by the way is extremely articulate in this series, asks if the gun made him feel powerful, and if he secretly wanted to shoot those people to feel that power unleashed. The robber begs for mercy, saying that it was a mistake. I'm not a bad guy, am I? Hulk closes in on him, retorting, What do you think? The next day, Jackie is talking to the police in the hospital. The entire gang has been severely injured, and the robber may never wake up and has almost broken every bone in his body. The police reveal to Jackie that the gang members are claiming that it was the work of the Hulk, and that Bruce Banner must not be dead. In a nearby motel room, Bruce sits contemplating his own morality, asking his reflection if he is a bad person. Issue 2 begins with Bruce having a nightmare about the hours after his exposure to the gamma bomb when he was believed to be in the walking ghost phase. The walking ghost phase is a real term used to describe the hours after exposure to severe radiation where the body has yet to show symptoms of the horrible death that is to come. Bruce remembers the terror of feeling fine, but hearing the clicking of the Geiger counter telling him that this was not the case. The frustration of this triggered a Hulk out. As Bruce wakes up, we learn about what his life has become. He is on the run, owning nothing, not even the clothes on his back, which he always loses when the Hulk comes out. He survives by begging or stealing what he can during the day, but remarks that the night belongs to the Hulk. This is a throwback to the very first Hulk comics, where rather than being triggered by rage, Banner's Hulkouts were triggered by the rising and falling sun. This was the cause of the transformations until Incredible Hulk number 4, when Bruce began triggering the transformations with the use of a machine. It wasn't until about a year later in Tales to Astonish number 60 when the Hulkouts began to be triggered by emotional outbursts. Bruce has found that the Hulk is able to guide him to situations where he is needed with an almost psychic accuracy, and has been spending his time trying to do good to atone for his past sins. This brings him to a small town where several people are dying one after each other. This chain of grief started with the death of the town's star quarterback, whose father was a doctor specializing in radiation treatment. Bruce visits the graveyard and realizes that the quarterback's grave is giving off gamma radiation, and that the string of deaths is a result of people visiting the grave, getting radiation poisoning, dying, and then infecting their loved ones when their graves are visited. Bruce tries to call in an anonymous tip to the government, but in order to be believed, has to reveal his identity to the operator. He climbs a mountain and finds a glowing green cave, where he discovers the radiation doctor, Dr. Fry, who has been transformed into a glowing green ghost-like gamma creature. A walking ghost, if you will. He is surrounded by the dead bodies of people who discovered the cave that he has been killing in order to avoid them knowing he is alive. He attacks Bruce, but Hulk comes out. Fry admits to the Hulk that after his wife died, he started fearing death, and in order to avoid it, created his own gamma formula inspired by Banner's work. It seemed to work with no side effects, so when his son announced that he was going away to play football at college, Fry gave him the formula to help him avoid injury on the field. Unfortunately, it turned out that the reason Fry hadn't had any adverse effects was because he had developed a minor tolerance to gamma radiation due to his constant exposure to it through his work. His son got sick fast, bleeding green out of his eyes and throwing up green bile worthy of Danny DeVito's Penguin. The son started talking about how he could see a green door below them and that someone was looking through it. He died, and soon after, Fry began transforming into a gamma creature. Hulk explains the consequences that his actions have had on the town, and Fry begs for his life as he is still afraid of death. Hulk tears off his limbs and buries him in the cave, sealing off the entrance, leaving him to spend eternity buried alive and alone. The issue ends with Fry reconsidering his position and screaming and begging for a death that will not come. Something I can relate to as someone who saw X-Men Dark Phoenix in theaters. Issue 3. Jackie McGee is interviewing people who witnessed an incident involving the Hulk and the villain Hotshot. Each witness is giving a very different perspective on the events, with each of their stories being drawn in a different art style. Hotshot had taken a church hostage because he believed that his girlfriend Jess had been possessed, and he wanted to get her an exorcism. Like Dr. Fry's son, she had been rambling about a green door that she had been seeing in visions. Hulk busts in and stops Hotshot, and Jess is found dead in a motel with her head spun the wrong way around. The words "green door" have been scrawled on the wall. Hotshot is blamed for her death and hangs himself in prison soon after. Jackie puts the story together, but gets a phone call from Walter Lenkowski, aka Sasquatch of Alpha Flight. He also wants to find Bruce as he needs help with an issue he is having with his Sasquatch side. Issue 4. Walter arrives in South Dakota to talk to McGee. He explains his origin to her. Although a Canadian, he was attending Penn State University on a football scholarship, where he was rooming with a young Bruce Banner who had transferred to Penn for a semester to use their gamma facilities. Although most considered Walter a jock, he also had a passion for science and was inspired by his roommate to start learning about Gamma and became his research assistant. Bruce would sometimes go off on Walter, resenting the fact that he was already beloved as a football player and was trying to also become a Gamma scientist, something Bruce considered his territory. Walter went on to be a football star until he saw on the news what Bruce had become. He made it his mission to replicate Banner's work in a more controlled fashion, and using his NFL fortune and help and funding from the Canadian government's superhero monitoring agency, Department H, conducted an experiment quite similar to the one that transformed Banner into the Hulk in both the 70s TV show and the 2008 MCU film. The goal was to create a creature that could act as a deterrent for the Hulk, but as the experiment was conducted in the Arctic Circle, where the walls of reality are thinner, Walter became Sasquatch and saw the Green Door. A demon known as Tanarak entered him and started causing trouble, but that issue was dealt with all the way back in Alpha Flight Volume 1, Issue 23, and Walter insists that he has been demon-free ever since. Now that I've gone on my traditional tangent about Alpha Flight, let's get back to the Hulk. Walter's story causes Jackie to remember an incident when she was a child, where the Hulk went on a rampage in her hometown when she was a child and she saw him, developing a lifelong obsession with the Jade Giant. She and Walter begin tailing Bruce, stopping at bars where he has been spotted to try and find out where he is going. At one of these bars, a fight breaks out, and while trying to break it up, Walter is stabbed in the back. He is forced to experience every Canadian's worst nightmare while traveling in the States and is taken to the hospital for a no doubt very expensive surgery. While sitting in the waiting room, Jackie wonders why Walter didn't transform into Sasquatch when he was stabbed. Bruce shows up and talks to Jackie, telling her that they need to evacuate the hospital. In the operating room, Walter transforms into Sasquatch and begins attacking the surgeons. Issue 5. Issue 5 begins with a flashback aboard the Alpha Flight space station. Although originally Canada's greatest super team, Marvel has changed this so that they have become an international task force operating in space, being led by Carol Danvers, aka Captain Marvel. Now, I am not a fan of this. I mean, no disrespect to Captain Marvel, but why the f is an American in charge of Alpha Flight? It's our one cool super team. Ugh. Anyways, stay on topic, Andrew. This isn't an Alpha Flight video, it's a video about the Hulk. Anyways, in this flashback, Carol Danvers tells Sasquatch that the team is concerned that he is getting more aggressive in the field. Longtime team member Puck points out that it is becoming increasingly rare that Walter is seen in his human form. Walter brushes off their concerns, but when in private, discovers that it is becoming more and more difficult for him to return to his human form. In the present at the hospital, Banner gets McGee to evacuate the hospital while he goes to confront Sasquatch, who has eaten his entire surgical team. Bruce asks Walter if they can talk, but Sasquatch says, "I'm not Walter," and attacks Bruce, triggering his transformation into the Hulk. They fight, and Hulk deduces that Walter stayed in his Sasquatch form too long, and as a result, something got into him through the Green Door. The demon controlling Sasquatch reveals that he is actually the spirit of Bruce's evil dead father, Brian Banner. Now, Brian is a piece of work who is responsible for a lot of the trauma in Bruce's life and the death of his mother. He has fought Bruce multiple times over the years and is one of the few people that Bruce and the Hulk fear. This causes the Hulk to struggle in the fight before he realizes that it is Bruce who has a reason to fear Brian, not him. Brian reveals that he is being used as a host personality for some other being known as the One Below All. He uses Walter's claws to blind Hulk. Brian corners McGee, but Hulk absorbs the gamma in Walter's body, causing him to transform back into his human form. Hulk allows McGee to ask him one question. She asks how to become like him, and Hulk tells her to go home and leaves. Walter wakes up and realizes he no longer has the power to transform into Sasquatch. Hulk realizes that when he absorbed Walter's gamma, he also absorbed Brian Banner into him. Issue 6. Bruce is in a motel. He only has hazy memories of what happened at the hospital, but knows that Hulk has absorbed something from Walter, and therefore hasn't let the Hulk out in 2 days. Hulk writes a note to Banner telling him they must return home. In California, Bruce's wife, Betty Ross, watches reports about the Hulk on the news and reasons that it can't be him, as if Bruce was alive, he surely would have reached out. We discover that her and the Hulk's other allies are being watched by an organization known as the Shadow Base. They have found Dr. Fry and are trying to use him to create a creature that can battle the Hulk. In order to find the Hulk, they decide to use the recent incident with Sasquatch to their advantage. On Alpha Flight Space Station, Walter is being examined by longtime teammate Shaman, who suspects that the force that took him over was creation's other dark half, the one below all. Captain Marvel comes in and reveals that the US government is wanting to extradite Walter and have him put to death for his involvement in the hospital incident. The only way to prevent this is to capture the Hulk and hand him over to the government with the help of a super team that it actually makes sense for her to be a member of, the Avengers. In Iowa, Bruce is making his way home to the Gamma test site where the Hulk was born. Hulk believes that the extra power of the site will give him the strength to defeat Brian. Danvers shows up with the Avengers and tries to take him into custody, but he transforms into the Hulk and prepares to take on his former teammates. Issue 7. Hulk fights the Avengers, managing to take out Thor, Captain America, Black Panther, Iron Man, and She-Hulk, while Captain Marvel works to evacuate a nearby town. Iron Man is weirdly eager to try out a weapon known as the Helios laser. They fire it and it reduces the whole town to ash and turns Bruce into crispy bits. He is turned over to the Shadow Base, who split him into separate pieces and keep the various body parts in jars to prevent Hulk from healing while they study him. The scientists at the Shadow Base are studying Hulk's healing factor as they continue to torture the vivisected hero. On Alpha Flight Space Station, Danvers tells McGee about how the Hulk has been taken by the US government without a trace, as anyone who could give them information has become unreachable. Although he no longer has his powers, Walter is still an expert in gamma radiation and is put in charge of a new team by Captain Marvel with the mission of locating the Hulk. They call themselves Gamma Flight as a bit of an inside joke, although there actually was already a Marvel team known as Gamma Flight. You see, back when Alpha Flight operated under the Canadian government, they had various training teams that heroes would join while they worked their way up to the main team, one of which was Gamma Flight. Ugh. Focus, Andrew, it's not an Alpha Flight video. Hulk, you're talking Hulk! In the lab, Hulk reveals that he has been allowing the scientists to study him so that he can better understand himself, and could have escaped at any time. He snaps his fingers, creating a shockwave that shatters the jars, allowing his various body parts to reassemble. He absorbs the cruel scientist who has been torturing him, and escapes to make his way to the Gamma Bomb site. Issue 9. The villain Bushwhacker is working for the Shadow Base and is tracking the Hulk as he continues on his journey. The Shadow Base has made a deal with Carl Creel, aka the Absorbing Man, and have been experimenting on him to make him stronger so that he can defeat the Hulk. The experiments give him the ability to absorb gamma power and turns his skin red. Hulk gets to the base but realizes that it was actually Brian Banner's idea to go there so that he could get rid of the Hulk. Hulk is about to leave when he is attacked by Absorbing Man. They fight, but Hulk grows weaker and emaciated every time he lands a blow. Creel absorbs too much of Hulk's power and ends up absorbing Brian Banner and the One Below All. Absorbing Man's consciousness is transported to another realm where the One Below All appears before him in a form Creel can comprehend, and tells him that as a creature of pride, he was always going to end up in hell. Back on Earth, Creel's body tears itself apart in front of a shocked Hulk. Issue 10. Aboard Alpha Flight Space Station, Walter gets a positive ID on Hulk's gamma signature and sets out with Gamma Flight and McGee to track him down. Creel is still stuck in the other realm and cries about how sorry he is. Back on Earth, his mutilated body repeats the words to an unimpressed Hulk, but continues to attack him. Hulk rips out Absorbing Man's spine and uses it to beat the crap out of him. Jackie, Puck, and Walter show up in a ship to try and speak to Hulk, but Bushwhacker uses a sniper rifle to take a shot at Hulk, making Hulk think that Gamma Flight is firing on him. He is sent into a blind rage, and with a thunderous Hulk smash, takes out the ship. Hulk comes to his senses when he sees Creel running towards the test site. He realizes that Brian's plan was to absorb more gamma radiation so he could open the green door. Before he can go after Creel, Puck shoots him with a plasma rifle. Creel absorbs the gamma radiation and opens the green door, transporting Hulk, Jackie, Puck, Walter, and Bushwhacker into the other realm. Jackie asks where they are, and the Hulk turns to her and says, "Welcome to hell."
Number 10, Nightcrawler. The teleporting son of Mystique and Azazel. He's such a cool character. I mean, fans adore him, and it's not hard to see why. He has an intriguing backstory, but also his powers are visually very cool. One of the cool things about Kurt is that he technically can't die. His mutant ability doesn't really let him age, so depending on how he lives his life, it could be forever. Now, I should mention that he has died before, but he ended up returning. I mean, that's the life of being an X-Men, I guess. He's consistently putting himself in danger so that, they can protect people. You never know what day will be your last. But it is the comic world, so even if he dies again, I'm sure he will find a way back. Again. Number 9, Hope Summers. Hope Summers is the adopted daughter of Cable, aka Nathan Summers. Now, during the Avengers vs. X-Men event, once they managed to extract the Phoenix Force from Cyclops, she was able to harness its power, which in turn made her essentially immortal. She was then known as the White Phoenix for a little while, and worked with Scarlet Witch to help restore the mutant race after it was almost completely wiped out a few years prior. Number 8. Mystique. Earlier on in this list I talked about her son, Nightcrawler, so it should come as no surprise that Raven would also be on this list. Now, Raven is a shapeshifter. She can transform her body into anyone, and that comes with a lot of perks. One of them being she essentially can't die. Mystique is said to be over 100 years old, but you would never know because she can be any age she wants to, essentially. Of course, she is not immune to being killed in any other types of ways, but she's extremely resourceful, so I would not bet against her. Number 7. Psylocke. Psylocke is a mutant with a telekinetic ability. She has become quite popular over the last few years, even making a jump into the comic book movie world in X-Men Apocalypse. Now, she has been no stranger to death in the comics. In Extreme X-Men, she was killed by the villain known as Vargas. She then was brought back to life by her brother Jamie. But that's not all. She then died again in the Hunt for Wolverine series, but of course, she didn't stay dead for that long. She was powerful enough to bring herself back this time, proving once again that not even death can keep her down. Number 6. Apocalypse. Technically, Apocalypse is said to be immortal, yet he has been defeated and killed a few different times. But that hasn't stopped him from returning again and again and again. Number 5. Franklin Richards. Franklin is the son of Reed Richards and Susan Storm, better known as Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Woman. But the crazy thing is, Franklin is a mutant, and a super powerful one at that. Seriously, he's considered to be an Omega level mutant. Even Galactus has said that he is the most powerful mutant ever born. And coming from Galactus, that's a big deal. Pun most definitely intended. Even alternate versions of him are powerful. There's a version of him from Earth 12665 that actually took down 2 Celestials and became immortal. I mean, I can't imagine what Reed and Sue must think. Franklin is also the main source of conflict in the new Fantastic Four X-Men series. If you have time, I would definitely recommend picking that one up. Number 4. Professor X. Charles Xavier technically died during the Avengers vs. X-Men event series, but years later he made his triumphant return to the land of the living. Just not in the way we all expected. I mean, we knew he would return eventually, but just not like this. Turns out when he was killed by Dark Phoenix Cyclops, his consciousness was found by the Shadow King, and basically he was trapped in an astral plane for what felt like hundreds of years. But he eventually found a way to escape and possessed the body of Phantom X. And he wasn't going by Professor X anymore. He now wanted to be called X. So that's how Xavier came back. Number 3. Jean Grey. Jean Grey and Death have a tricky relationship. When she was harnessing the Phoenix Force, nothing could really kill her, but she did end up dying and coming back, both in the comics and the films. The funny thing is, the film version is actually more confusing than the comic version. X-Men movie continuity is, well, super confusing, to the point where fans have now just accepted that it's just messed up and will never be fixed. Like, Days of Future Past was supposed to fix everything and even brought Jean back, but then the past storylines changed it yet again with the release of the new Dark Phoenix film. My head hurts even thinking about it. But regardless, Jean dies and she comes back. She never stays dead. Number 2, Deadpool. Wade Wilson. Can anything kill him? Well, yeah, kind of. He has died a couple of times in the comics, and briefly in the movie Deadpool 2. But he does end up coming back. I mean, he's a hard person to kill. He has an insane healing factor that basically protects him from anything, similar to Wolverine. But that hasn't stopped writers from trying to end the Merc with the Mouth story every now and again. For example, in the film Deadpool 2, he does die briefly because he saves a kid and wants to be with Vanessa. But of course, it's not his time, and not only does Vanessa feel that way, but Cable as well, who ends up time traveling to save him. Man, what a cool friendship they have. And then, of course, Wade gets a hold of Cable's time travel device and causes a whole bunch of mayhem on the timeline, even stopping Ryan Reynolds from playing Green Lantern and the ending of X-Men Origins Wolverine. Number 1, Wolverine. Wolverine is a very interesting one. Known for his adamantium claws and healing factor, Logan is basically the definition of unkillable. He has survived countless opponents and events over the years that should have killed him but didn't. He's been blown up and completely regenerated, although he did die during the Death of Wolverine storyline, but he didn't stay dead forever. Logan returned, proving that no matter what happens, he will always return. Although he did die during the 2017 film Logan, which was just an amazing movie, but That's more because Hugh Jackman was, retiring from the role and they wanted to give him a fitting exit, which they did.
Alright, coming in at number 10 is Nightmare. Nightmare rules over the nightmare realm of the dream dimension where he feeds off of human psychic energy. Nightmare is also practically all-powerful in this home dimension, but he is constantly seeking to find a way to fully infiltrate our dimension so he can use his vast power to take over. That mission is actually a common thread for pretty much all these demons, if I'm gonna be honest. Nightmare himself has come into conflict with a very large number of heroes, famously the Hulk and the hero Cloak, but Doctor Strange is his biggest human rival, as that is sort of Doctor Strange's duty to keep our reality safe from demons like Nightmare. That's also a common thread for pretty much all the demons here. While he has been defeated before, Nightmare can never truly perish unless all the humans of the world stopped dreaming, which I doubt will ever happen anytime soon. Among his most impressive feats is capturing the mind of the cosmic entity known as Eternity after putting 1/3 of the population to sleep and channeling their dreams. And he's all the way down here at number 10. Coming in at number 9 is Blackheart. The character of Blackheart is a demon that was created by Mephisto using the combined evil energy from a town called Christ's Crown, a place that has drawn incredibly evil acts to it over centuries and centuries. This being, Mephisto's son, essentially, had immense power that could rival or even possibly overcome his creator. He even had a level of telekinesis that could destroy an entire planet if he chose to. He has fought off Punisher, Spider-Man, Wolverine, Wonder Man, a whole group of Avengers, and even a combined Red Hulk, Ghost Rider, and Venom. He could cast illusions, summon other demons, shapeshift, manipulate others, and he's even taken his papa's throne in his hell dimension for a time. Blackheart is not someone to trifle with. In at number 8 is the Dweller in Darkness. Like other fear lords like Nightmare, the Dweller in Darkness feeds off the fears of others. Big surprise there. Unlike Nightmare though, the Dweller followed a belief system known as the Way of the Shamblu, which led him to remove his head from his body. It's something a little taboo among others like him. In the universe that existed before the current one, the Dweller in Darkness actually caused a crack in the Macran crystal, or the nexus of all realities, which caused a chain reaction and unleashed the power of the End Galaxy within it, which resulted in the destruction of the universe. The Dweller hoped to feed off the fears of all living beings, knowing that the end is near, but the Phoenix Force touched all the minds of living beings in existence and united them in peace. But we are not skipping over the fact that he destroyed the whole universe on purpose. One of this demon's other greatest powers is the ability to create other beings out of the fear he ingests, one of which being the villain Despair, who very nearly made this list. If you are enjoying this list so far, be sure to drop a little old likey poo on this video. It really helps us out here at Top 10 Nerd. Number 7, Mephisto. Mephisto is just a big old pain in the butt. His whole shtick is posing around as the devil and ruling over his dimension, which he calls hell. But he is not actually the biblical devil, and his dimension isn't actually hell. He just uses the idea of these things to instill fear in his victims, making it easier to manipulate them. His MO involves him constantly trying to trick people into giving him their souls, usually in exchange for something, but he's usually got some kind of wordplay going on that allows him to get away with not actually giving his victims what they want, and usually leaving them worse for wear. His most famous soul-stealing escapades would be when he turned Johnny Blaze into the Ghost Rider, or when he was trying to steal the soul of the incredibly noble Norrin Radd, aka the Silver Surfer. Or there's even the time he turned into a snake and tricked Adam and Eve into eating that damn apple. Yes, that was Mephisto. In fact, one of his main weaknesses is his reliance on a person to submit to giving him their corrupted soul, which, while he is probably one of the most powerful Hell Lords, with an almost unlimited amount of power in his Hell dimension, his power is also directly linked to his realm, so whenever he is away, he will get weaker and weaker as time goes on. Number 6, Surtur. Surtur is the gigantic fire demon who possesses powers of apocalyptic proportions and has been plaguing Asgard since time immemorial. He wields the Twilight Sword, a magical sword capable of manipulating mystical energies, breaking interdimensional barriers, and summoning hordes of demons. He is the one who brings about Ragnarok, literally fated to take the life of Odin and destroy Asgard. Being on par with Odin, he is actually technically more powerful than the other 4 demons on this this list so far. It's just that this guy is mainly focused on Asgardians and usually doesn't go off trying to mess with anyone else, even if he totally could. Number 5. Dormammu. Dormammu is a member of a race known as the Faultine, who are composed entirely of mystical energy, but he set himself apart, becoming immensely more powerful and eventually becoming the ruler of the Dark Dimension, with enough power to destroy almost all other mystical demons. According to the Sorcerer Supreme, Dormammu is the most feared enemy with the power to defeat the Avengers, Defenders, and Eternity itself. He can absorb pocket dimensions and has enough power to pose a threat to the universe. Unfortunately, Dormammu is prone to making mistakes and abiding by a code of honor that usually results in his loss. Number 4. Set. Set here is one of the Elder Gods, beings of immense power that were some of the first sentient life on Earth. Of all of them though, Set was the first to realize that he could steal the power of his other Elder Gods by consuming them, which he discovered by taking out his own brother, making him the first ever killer. This set off a whole war between the Elder Gods, with most of them devolving into demons. Set himself is portrayed as a 7-headed serpent, and his constant contest for power had him finally defeated and banished to a dimension all of his own, where he is omnipotent and all-powerful. He was banished because it is practically impossible to actually permanently take him down. Now, like his other fallen brethren, he constantly seeks to find a way to enter back into our reality through his followers and magical artifacts. Number 3. Chthon. If you thought Set was bad, well, here's his brother. Chthon is one of the most powerful demons to ever exist. He has a huge influence over the earth, causing some of the darkest events ever. Even though he predates anything of this nature, of all the devil-like demons out there, Chthon is probably the closest thing to the actual devil. He and his Ngari actually ruled the earth before the angel Lucifer attacked them with his angelic army, before he ever rebelled against heaven and became the ruler of hell. Chthon himself is responsible for all the witches, werewolves, vampires, harpies, goblins, troids, night gaunts, and other dark creatures, as well as being the master of the most powerful form of magic, chaos magic. That's the same stuff used by Scarlet Witch, who has altered all of reality with just a fraction of that power. His opposite, Oshtur, is one of the 3 beings that make up the Vishanti, and they stand in direct opposition to Chthon specifically, creating the Book of Vishanti in response to Chthon's Darkhold. Other demons and dark sorcerers, including Dormammu and Mephisto, call on Chthon's name to cast some of their strongest spells, and the Sorcerer Supreme, Doctor Strange, was almost corrupted and killed by Chthon's presence alone. Number 2. The One Below All. If Chthon is like the darkest possible magic-wielding demon, the One Below All is like the idea of strength and destruction taken to their absolute farthest, darkest limits. At least that's how I see it. Now, I'm not totally sure about my ranking here. From the possible future we saw in Immortal Hulk, the One Below All was capable of destroying literally everything that has ever existed. We have to assume this included every other demon on this list, as there was literally nothing left. The One Below All is the complete opposite of the One Above All, trapped in the below place, which is the lowest level of hell. This entity is the source of gamma radiation, and he's the reason it has mutated certain individuals like the Hulk. The One Below All can manipulate and influence these mutates to help do its bidding, but it also seems to influence non-gamma mutated individuals as well to do things they wouldn't normally do. The only problem is that the One Below All is fairly new to comics and hasn't really been able to show the full capability of his power, except for when it destroyed literally everything in the universe. It's similar to the way the One Above All has remained relatively obscure, only giving us brief glimpses of his capability. And then in at number 1, finally, is Shuma-Gorath. Shuma-Gorath is an incredibly ancient demon made up of sheer power, and he is one of the primal powers of chaos in the multiverse. To even call him a demon feels like kind of an understatement. In comparison to him, other powerful demons such as Dormammu have expressed their inferiority to Shuma-Gorath, and the powerful Hell Lords like Mephisto and Satanish have called themselves rats in a greater temple under the power of Shuma-Gorath. Nightmare himself serves Shuma-Gorath, as do so many other demons. Shuma-Gorath is probably the most powerful of all the great old ones and many angled ones. His true form isn't even comprehensible to us humans. He just appears as that big eye with armored skin and tentacles that he can use to destroy not only multiple galaxies, but whole whole realities. Practically unstoppable and fully omnipotent in his own dimension, and able to extend his reach across dimensional barriers, his power and influence has grown to rule over hundreds of dimensions and universes. He's the demon that demons themselves fear.
Number 10. Stained Glass Scarlett. Stained Glass Scarlett is a young god who came into existence following her own death. That is, following the death of her mortal self, Scarlett Fasanera. Scarlett had a tragic and rough life, filled with mistreatment by the men who she would have likely expected to trust the most. After her death in the same church where both her son and her husband also lost their lives, her story spread, gaining power. This power allowed Scarlett to return as a young goddess, who is connected to Moon Knight, seemingly immortal and possesses the ability to control glass. Number 9. Storm. While Storm might not be a god in the traditional sense, she was worshipped as a weather goddess for quite a while because of her abilities. And considering how powerful she is, and how much we all love her, I think we would all agree that she has more than earned her goddess status. When it comes to Storm's power levels, we have seen them spike to the point that the whole world was affected by her weather manipulation abilities. At the same time that this happened, as a reaction to her then claustrophobia, her power was also likened to that of the Phoenix, partially because it was so awesome and partially because it was so volatile. Over the years, Storm has gained more and more control over her powers and also healed from the trauma that caused her claustrophobia, meaning that she is pretty much in full control now. And she proved more recently in the comics during her battle against Tarn the Uncaring that she also doesn't need her mutant powers to be a deadly badass. Also, I feel like she's definitely in control of the ability to just manipulate weather on a planetary level, because we've seen her do that with Mars. At least I'm pretty sure she's done that on Mars. So yeah, there's also that. And friends, if you are loving this list and you would love to see some more lists where we get to pump up some of the most powerful ladies in Marvel Comics or DC Comics or indie comics or all of the above, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Hera. Hera is a member of the Pantheon of Olympus. She is a Greek goddess who traditionally is associated in Greek mythology and belief with motherhood, family, childbirth, and marriage. In Marvel, she is likewise the wife of Zeus, but more recently in the comics, her and the other Olympians took a turn to become powerful villains. They were killed by the vengeful goddess Nyx and later returned as tyrannical and greedy gods who raised planets with a vengeance. In the end, they were defeated by the Guardians of the Galaxy, lost as Star-Lord was lost on the other side of reality. Eventually though, Star-Lord learned the Dark Olympians had escaped due to him using his elemental gun, where their power had been trapped and stored. They returned with him back to Earth and were more permanently defeated, at least so it seems, when they were seemingly killed by the Guardians, Hera included. She was squashed in the end by Groot. R.I.P. Hera. Number 7. Hela. Hela is the ruler of the Norse and Asgardian underworld. While in the MCU we know her as Loki and Thor's mysterious sister who was locked away in punishment for her continuous pursuit of war against Odin's wishes after he ultimately decided to kinda usher in an era of peace. In the comics main continuity of Earth 616, she is not Thor's sister, but instead, she's his niece. That's right, the Hela of Earth 616 is believed to be one of Loki's children, his daughter. She ended up becoming the ruler of the underworld as was decreed by Odin. Though just because she isn't a shunned sister who seeks revenge on Asgard doesn't mean that she isn't a villain, and doesn't mean that she doesn't sometimes try to seek revenge on Asgard. Even on Earth 616, Hela is known for her generally villainous intentions, and there was even a prophecy when she was born warning that she would be a great danger to the other gods and goddesses of Asgard. Number 6. Enchantress. Amora the Enchantress is one of the most powerful magic users in the Marvel Universe, and also happens to be a goddess within the realm of Asgard. She has been known by many names other than Amora, including Idun and Idunna, but what she has symbolized has always remained the same. Enchantress is meant to be the symbol of the perfect female form, known for her beauty and charm, which allows her to bend others, especially men, to her will. It is because of her beauty that Enchantress was deemed the only one to pick the golden apples from Yggdrasil. Although her backstory and origin are steeped in lore and Norse mythology, in the comics most people know her mainly as a villainess, who often goes up against the hero Thor, among others. Number 5. Aegis. Aegis is one of the Proemial gods who are known for being the oldest in the cosmos. They are believed to have come into existence right after the first Big Bang, and were possibly the first entities that existed after that. Although, to be honest with you, with gods and goddesses, it seems like a lot of groups claim to be the oldest or the first. Aegis was one member of the Proemial pantheon to become corrupted, seeking new purpose after she was no longer needed. Attempting to rise up with her fellow rebellious gods, she ended up imprisoned along with her peers by Galactus, and she remained there for many years, although she would eventually escape and would later perish. Her power was said to rival that of Galactus and his heralds combined. That's pretty powerful. Number 4. Phoenix. One of the most powerful entities in the cosmos is the Phoenix Force. While the Phoenix doesn't always take a female host, I would say that many of the Force's hosts have been female, especially if we're focusing on the more notable ones. Currently in the comics, the Phoenix Force is bonded to Echo, aka Hero Maya Lopez, but its most well-known host is probably that of Marvel Girl, aka classic X-Men teammate Jean Grey. You might not think of Phoenix as a god either, but the entity has been worshipped both by some on planet Earth in the past and by the Shi'ar at one point. Number 3. Celestial Madonna. Celestials are known for being all-powerful and almost impossible to defeat or fight against. We got our first taste of just how ginormous and seemingly unstoppable they can be in Eternals when the team of heroes decided to stand together to prevent the Celestials from destroying Earth, which they had decided to defend as their home. Most Celestials tend to skew male or simply could be considered to be without gender, but Celestial Madonna is unique, as she is one of the few featured Celestials to actually have a seemingly female form. Celestial Madonna has only appeared in a few issues, but she is a Celestial, so we can imagine that she must be one of the most powerful, probably female, gods or goddesses around in the Marvel Universe. Because Celestials. Number 2. Gaia. Gaia is literally known as Mother Earth in the Marvel Universe. She made her first appearance back in the 1970s in the 1974 series of Doctor Strange, in issue number 6. Back then she was introduced as Mother Nature, but would later become known as Gaia. Gaia is believed to be one of the oldest goddesses on the planet Earth and is related to the god of chaos, Chthon, who is also known for his ties to Avenger Scarlet Witch in the comics. Gaia belongs to the family of elder gods, and like many on this list, is going to be kinda hard to rank because she's pretty much maxed in almost all stats, considering that she is an extremely ancient being and entity. Basically, I feel like with this list, it's really hard to put them in any order because you're like, I mean, they're all pretty powerful. So yeah, you can let me know if you have a different order for the ones that I have here based on what you've read in the comics about them. Number 1. Death. Death is an entity we are familiar with in a few different forms, but for this point I'm going to be focusing on the version that Thanos is typically seen pining after, which is honestly typically the version we associate with Death when we're talking about her in the Marvel Universe. Sometimes referred to as Mistress Death, she made her first appearance in Marvel Mystery Comics issue number 21 back in the 1940s. So not only is she old and ancient in the world of the Marvel Universe, but also within Marvel Comics history as well.